Hello and welcome to the Stock Out. I am one of your hosts, Mike Baudendistel. My head looks smaller on the screen than Grace's does for some reason. But Grace, good to see you. Are you heading out to Matt's this week, or is it next week?
Well, well, first off, you're reading my mind this morning. Yeah, it's like I wish I could like bring my hand over and pat you on the head or something. No, I am going to Matt's this week. I'm really excited. I mean this is an event that I tell people like you have to truly be there to understand and experience it. It's don't you dare wear a suit jacket. It's wear blue jeans and Matt's t-shirts and trucking t-shirts, which I have collected over the years of going. So it's nice to pack those up. But yeah, I'm really excited. It's going to be a great time. Especially because I think the economy right now, a lot of stuff we're going to talk about is affecting a lot of the people I'll get to meet at that event. It's going to be really nice to kind of talk to people at the who are actually on the ground or on the road, right, getting work done and see where they stand with the economy as well. And I'll be, for everyone out there, we'll be doing the Sirius XM show live. Dooner will be live on the Sirius XM stage right in the middle. You can't miss it. It's right as you enter the big main room. He'll be on Wednesday from 5 to 6, and I'll be on Thursday from 5 to 6 as well. So come enjoy the show. We have seats for audience members to sit and chat. I always try to give the audience some time to get involved with the conversations as well, and it should be a really good time. So come find us. I'll also be working with Uber Freight on a couple of initiatives at the event, so come find us at their beer garden as well. And for Dooner, he'll be hanging out with the Truck Parking Club team too, and I believe podcasting throughout the event as well. So, come find us, come say hi, come tell us your thoughts, and we'll be working on, of course, articles and content there too.
Absolutely. So for those who are going to Louisville, be sure to find the folks at FreightWaves. It'll be a great time. Before we get into the content today, I do want to make an announcement. I was just on the Logistics of Logistics podcast, which I think is one of the better podcasts. I know that Joe Lynch. He talked about meeting you. He does a great podcast. If you want to find this, I was on to talk about CPG supply chain. He said he hadn't had anyone to talk about CPG supply chain yet. And so that's what we dove into. So right up the alley of the stockouters. So we talked about tariffs, inflation, the Gen Z trends, the health trends, the AI impacts, all those things that are impacting the CPG industry. And that is available at the logisticsoflogistics.com. Or you can just go to wherever you find podcasts and look for Logistics of Logistics. Would encourage you to subscribe to his channel. Really a great podcast that he runs. And then another announcement we'll have here for those not already signed up for the Stock Out newsletter. You can do that at freightwaves.com/the Stock Out, or just go to freightwaves.com up the top newsletters. And then it's going to be the second one there under market insights. We have that sent out every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And so plenty of content. Also go to gosonar.com for additional content. I write up a blog every week on what's happening in Sonar, what that means for the freight industry. And the latest sort of one-liner was that the pricing power still in the favor of shippers. For the most part, we are seeing tender rejection spike and flatbed, but for most of the other modes, still pricing power is in the hands of shippers. And so with that, I want to head to the first story today. Purple means caution. FedEx was down pretty substantially on Friday after they reported earnings on Thursday evening. You see the stock sell off in that chart. And Eric Kulish wrote up an article for the site. And what happened was the company missed earnings expectations by 12 cents for the quarter. They have a little bit of a different fiscal year. It was a fiscal third quarter. And so, along with what we're hearing from a lot of other companies, and even from the Federal Reserve, the economic concerns may be a little bit worse than what was appreciated, earlier. So, FedEx expects revenue to be flat to down year over year for the fiscal year. They reduced full year earnings by 6%, went from earnings expectation of $19 to $20 to $18 to $18.60, and driven by a number of things. Economic uncertainty, including slowing consumer spending and parcel demand, softness in the industrial economy. We've seen that in other places like the rail carload volume, shift towards lower margin and deferred shipments. That's something that we've seen in recent quarters from UPS, where UPS has seen more volume in some of the slower services. They call it UPS Smart Post, and this is the first time I think I've heard this from FedEx as well, and so that causes their mix to shift towards lower margin services. And then FedEx also is feeling pressure from cost inflation, that's labor, and also purchase transportation costs. Not immediately clear if that was purchase transportation costs because they're actually seeing inflation and freight rates rising, which doesn't completely seem consistent with what we've seen in other data sources, or if it's just that their network is out of balance and they're bringing on new offerings and had to see higher purchase transportation costs for that reason. So the mixed impact, I think, is really one of the things that's having a big impact on the parcel sector. And they go into some of the details there. Deferred package volume increased 5%, while priority express volume declined 3%. So you have the less expensive volume rising, the more expensive volume declining. So just very similar to what we've seen from UPS is what I have noticed. And then you have some observations here on your end, Grace.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think over the last week in particular, and of course, with chats with what the feds are doing as well, it's a real kind of that uncertainty, I think, is becoming more and more of a concern. And on maybe, I personally think it's funny / interesting news. And I would hope that any of our audience members who might be doing this new service would really maybe start a budget plan or something along those lines for their own financial services. But kind of a clue towards where the economy is sitting right now is it came out last week, and Twitter had a good funnel time that DoorDash itself would be offering now the wonderful buy now, pay later plans for basically financing your meals. And I believe they partnered with Klarna, if I remember correctly. And you saw a lot of memes like this, just absolutely big concerns on where consumers' pockets are. And seeing clearly, I don't think this offering is just one on a whim. I assume that DoorDash has done some research on its customers and probably found that they're using these services across the board in other areas. We've talked about how carriers have been able to kind of spread themselves across the last couple of years of what the economy has looked like for them. I think this is a clear example that we're seeing the same exact thing happen with consumers over the last couple of years as well, especially as we saw more of these buy now, pay later plans come out. I do get a concern of them being overused, and I think this is probably the biggest red flag I've seen of this in particular. But again, it's likely means that consumers are using it, that it will be used as well. It'll be good for Klarna, good for DoorDash, but I assume not great for the end consumer, depending on where their finances are. I mean, if you have to finance a $30 purchase, let's make sure we're purchasing the right stuff and maybe not doing DoorDash unless we're doing grocery delivery or something along those lines. But still, I think that is a clear sign that maybe the economy is not where people are hoping it would be, and that, a telltale sign that there's consumers are still trying to stretch themselves with this very thin amount of capital behind them as well.
Yeah, it does seem like if there is just a major economic shock and you go into a recession, it's just all this stuff like the buy now, pay later is going to exacerbate how bad that downturn is. So that's kind of my thought on that. But yeah, that's really something. Buy now, pay later on a DoorDash thing. But it just seems like you go to a website, it doesn't matter what it is, they try to pitch you on the buy it now, pay it later. But so people must be using it like you said. I think we should move on to the next topic. So this is a great article you wrote last week. Walmart is moving forward with its brokerage operation, and so it's becoming expanding its services in the transportation industry. I mean, it's known for having very large private fleets. Some of the best trucking jobs with Walmart. So they're really a logistics company in addition to retailer. That's been true for some time. And so what's different with this is they're launching this new third-party logistics offering. So trucking companies are receiving emails about that. I'm sure some trucking companies come to you and said, "Oh, look at this email. This is kind of interesting." Seems to leverage the logistics network and offering to Walmart sellers. And so I think the sort of the ultimate goal that Walmart is going after is to compete more head to head with the Amazon marketplace. So, most of what's sold on Amazon, you're buying it from a marketplace seller. Not always clear. I think it's 60% goes through a marketplace seller. Not always clear which is which. But Walmart's bolstering these offerings. It seems like that's helping them compete with them. And then what also strikes me from the article you wrote, Grace, is that it seems like it's a way for Walmart to prevent freight fraud, because it's basically saying these are the carriers that are allowed to have this volume. We're not going to accept anyone. If they're the Harvard of trucking, as Craig Fuller would say, maybe they're also the Harvard of brokerage.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I've heard word that they're already working on talking with vetting services as well for that part of the business too. So they're clearly looking into the fraud aspect of it. I do agree. I mean, this will give them better control of their overall supply chain, and I hope that those who read FreightWaves, who really watched trends in this industry, this isn't anything completely new. We've seen Home Depot make the same moves with their flatbed capacity that they've used. We've seen shippers, even down to, and it's probably not the perfect example of this, but American Eagle, has made investments to acquire, take more control over their supply chain too. So we're seeing a lot of these enterprise shippers, I think, take a second to think, what is my leverage in this capacity, in this market, in the lanes that I run, and why aren't I looking at leveraging that in some type of way or fashion? They brought on James Reed about, I want to say, probably right about a year ago, who was at Kodiak Robotics and USA Truck in the past. So he's got plenty of experience. Not to say he's behind this initiative, but I think they showcase them, of course, leveraging some really great leadership within the industry to help push these type of initiatives forward. I think that's a telltale sign of this. Yes, I think this is definitely more of a play towards competing with Amazon than maybe much so taking over the brokerage space. In particular, I think that the big players in that space I wouldn't be afraid of this right away, but I definitely would be trying to figure out what business of mine is connected to Walmart and what could technically be at risk in this situation, and make some moves to de-risk maybe that piece of your business. But for sure, it's what we saw Amazon do, and I'm sure they've seen Amazon grow its transportation capabilities, its logistics capabilities, and said, why aren't we leveraging these? I mean, not only the technology that they have, but the networks that they've built across the whole world. And look at what they've done with Flipkart and a number of other acquisitions. This makes sense to me of why they would be doing this as well. And carriers who are getting invited, of course, yes, there's certain standards they have to set at, and I believe that's going to help, of course, with any fraud situations. And I believe they shrinkage, like maybe this loss of product between maneuvers or between transportation partners where they lack that visibility to see maybe a pallet or two go missing. They'll have a better view of that, I think, moving forward. But for the brokerage space in particular, what I would take from this is, again, enterprise shippers are starting to do this. This is not a new strategy of any sort. We've seen enterprise shippers start to make big investments in their supply chain. I mean, even down to, I think it was Lowe's maybe, and one of their distribution companies they acquired over the last couple of years. So companies are going to continue to do this. And if I was a broker out there, I wouldn't look at Walmart and say, how do we compete with them? I'd say, how do I compete with, my brokerage fellow broker down the street who's investing in technology and changing their offerings as a brokerage in particular. Because a big reason I think Walmart's probably doing this is because of the data, that they're able to get their hands on, and the insights they're able to get from that, and the different strategies they can form around that. So brokers, that's what you're you might have come into the game kind of slinging freight here and there, and getting a Walmart, part of Walmart's network in particular, and living off that. But moving forward, think you're going to see more of these enterprise shippers starting to invest and maybe acquire or take over parts of their supply chain. So where is you as a broker, where do you define yourself? What's your true expertise? What's your niche? What are you good at that someone like Walmart isn't going to be able to quickly take over? Is probably what you want to be asking yourself this morning.
Yeah, it does complicate things, I think, for brokers.
Yes.
I guess my main question is Walmart the only customer for this, or is Walmart the only shipper that's going to be using this brokerage one, or are there going to be other shippers?
Great question. I would assume at first, until this is officially out of like stealth mode, which they are technically still saying it's a kind of a beta. They are working through it. I would assume likely not, but at some point, I'm sure they will be offering up that capacity in some way, right? Whether that's another shippers reaching out to see if they can, leverage one of Walmart's trucks, like shipment backhaul right to where it needs to go, in some sort of fashion. But also, I think Walmart's going to be smart enough to understand what type of customer they're going to want to bring on. Brokers, I know we all out there have one. You probably have a customer or two that's actually losing you money if you really look at the statistics out there, and look at how much time you're taking to service and what your margins actually are. I don't think Walmart's going to take on any of those type of customers anytime soon. I assume it's going to be some type of strategic partnership where if they're seeing that, certain trucks are picking up or delivering in certain areas, and having a hard time with deadhead and backhauls, etc., or even vice versa, then they'll start to open up those partnerships to others. But I think it's going to be a little bit of time before we see it get to that point.
Very good. I want to move on to the next story. Forever 20 done. Forever 21 filed for bankruptcy. Expected to close all U.S. stores.
Yeah.
Got it. I'm working on those headlines. Filed Chapter 11 for the second time in 6 years. Blame this on dwindling mall traffic and online competition. Liquidation likely means liquidation. Unable to find a buyer for their 354 U.S. stores. That strikes me as a large number of stores, maybe more than they should have had. Authentic Brands owns the IP. Their CEO, Jamie Salter, said that called acquiring Forever 21 the biggest mistake I made. I think we all have an investment like that. And Simon Brookfield and Authentics paid $21 million for Forever 21 a few years ago. They probably thought it was a great deal at the time. Company cited inflation, consumer weakness, competition from the likes of Temu and Shein. Of course, company lost over $400 million the last 3 years, about $150 million loss just in the last year. So is this just a matter of it's hard to compete with Shein and Temu on price, and so they're not the cheapest. And then if you really want the good stuff, that's not their niche either, and they sort of got caught up in not being relevant.
Yeah, I think that. Hey, you said it right. I think the relevancy definitely is part of it. I mean, they did partner with Shein, I believe a year or so ago, to offer Forever 21 products in their marketplace. So they did try to work with the competition in some way. I think, to be honest with you, I think they're probably done and said during their first bankruptcy, which is probably why the biggest mistake I made comment is coming from that too. I mean, a big part of an additional part of Forever 21's issue during that bankruptcy was they always, if you ever went to like a Forever 21 store, the stores were always huge. It reminded me very much of like walking into a Old Navy, just like a lot of space. And in order to actually have all that space, the retailer also needs to fill that room up as well. And I just always think they had some inventory issues managing kind of that situation in particular. Yes, at the same time, people were less and less going to malls. So kind of that, I think, Forever 21 experience they're trying to build with those large spaces turn their back on them when no one wanted to, when we didn't have to go to the mall anymore to blow some time as teenagers, right? We could just scroll through TikTok doing that. Again, I think that's probably part of it too, not leveraging the different channels of purchasing that we're seeing more and more out of the younger generations, whether that's TikTok shop or through Instagram, Twitter, things of that nature. I think they're just it feels much like a Skype story, right? Just someone who could have probably made the right moves early on. I think especially during the pandemic, and maybe had survived or had a different story that we're seeing today, but didn't make those moves, made those moves way too late, and maybe even more so with the big space aspects, just were holding the really wrong set of cards that they'd want during the pandemic. Were likely saved from authentic brands, right, in that first bankruptcy, but I agree with your headline. I think Forever 20 done. 21 and done is for sure happening this time around. And hey, maybe we'll see some talk about cheap stuff coming out during that liquidation sale, but I don't think we're going to see this name come back into play.
Yeah, I mean, definitely economically sensitive items are doing worse. I mean, Nike is not doing well. Now they're not going to go bankrupt anytime, but their sales are way down. And also just things like this, it's always been hard. I've never really liked investing in them just because there's victim of fashion trends and those things.
Totally.
Yeah. But I want to move on to the next story, which is ocean rates continue to fall. And this is one of the Sonar piece of information that I think is just really interesting, where if you look at these Freightos Baltic daily index, so the white line is the ocean rates to move a 40-foot ocean-going container from China to the U.S. East Coast. You see that 32.87. The orange line is from China to the U.S. West Coast, 21.84. There's usually about a $1,000 spread between the two. But what's interesting here is that these are now at the lowest levels, and they have been not just a year-to-date low, but lower below any time in 2024, and now just a little bit higher than right before the Red Sea attacks. You see at the left part of that chart where they first shot up in December of 2023. That's when those Red Sea attacks started. So we're basically at a low post Red Sea attack, and it's not just specific to China to the U.S. It's really when you look at other rates, other ocean rates, those are down too. China through the Mediterranean, those are down. And Flexport has a good newsletter on this where they have attributed that to following Chinese New Year, the capacity has come back online faster than the demand has. And these rates are now about 14% below last year's low point. And then the rates seem to reflect, in some ways, falling demand, in certain locations. Although there still seems to be enough demand for now to move U.S. imports. We have another Sonar chart that suggests that an inbound ocean TEU volume index, that's still above year ago levels. So the white line is 2025. That kind of darker green that's just below it is 2024, and so that's still above year ago levels. And that suggests to me that really this has been elevated for last several months. We've seen record volumes coming in through the ports, last several months. I think a lot of that is pre-buy to avoid tariffs. Certainly the National Retail Federation thinks so, and they have all their members are the retailers. So at some point, I think this drops off, and then the ocean rates fall further. Potentially the Red Sea opens. Potentially a lot of this capacity that's being built, these ships that were ordered during the pandemic, which that could increase the capacity 8 or 10% too. It seems like the ocean market is in a pretty tough space. They can mitigate some of it by blank sailings and those things, but it seems like the good times for the ocean industry seem to be coming to an end.
What industry is having a good time right now, Mike? That's what maybe our next episode should be focused on, right? Is at this point, who's having the most fun? And I can't tell you. It's just the uncertainty, I think, from so many areas has got everyone kind of in this weird space. But I will say
the buy now, pay later companies.
Yeah, exactly. Klarna and Afterpay, Affirm, you guys, it's their moment of the week, right? They're killing it. They're the ones who are enjoying these times. I love it. Well, hey, let's wrap up today's episode. Remember, everyone, go join our community over at freightwaves.com. Click on newsletters, click the stock out. Of course, you'll get our wonderful newsletter once a week, including, of course, enjoying this wonderful episode every Monday as well. We're going to have some fun time here at Matt's, me, Dooner, and Adam Wingfield as well, who's going to be telling everyone about the playbook. So make sure you go find one of the three of us too over the next couple of days, because we're going to be having some fun educating carriers about, of course, not what's just happening with CPG and retailers, but what's happening within their business in the playbook as well. So excited to see you all on the road this week. Come find me if you do see me. Until then, hey, enjoy using maybe a buy now, pay later program, and we'll talk to you all on Monday.